Around the year 1190, Chrétien de Troyes wrote the unfinished narrative romance poem Perceval ou le Conte du Graal, aka Perceval, the Story of the Grail. The story describes the aspiring knight Perceval le Gallois embarking on a quest to find an elaborately decorated grail with mysterious healing properties. This poem is the first known depiction in literature of a knight on a quest for a holy grail. Chrétien de Troyes never finished the poem, so Perceval never did find that original grail. Since that original poem, the Holy Grail has been used in countless stories to represent some rare object or lofty goal that a protagonist is pursuing. Due to the inherently rare and difficult to discover nature of these Holy Grails, they often go years without discovery, sometimes never being found. But thankfully, the story of the quest for Holy Grails and fantastic contraption is still being written. What? Holy Grails and fantastic contraption. What does that even mean? Well, when Fantastic Contraption was first released, all the way back in 2008, there were 42 official levels associated with the game. 5 new levels were added to the official levels in 2015. With over 1.6 million accounts being created for the game, players flooded to set themselves apart from the crowd. In the early days of FC, this manifested in attempts to solve each of the official levels in the fewest pieces possible. By the end of 2008, many of these least piece records were starting to be cemented, culminating in the Ground 37 video that you are seeing be played now. And by 2009, each of the 42 official levels in Fantastic Contraption had seemed to reach their limits. But as it turned out, we had spent years wrongly believing there was nothing left to be found. So back into the jungle we ventured, not yet knowing what our exploration would reveal. This is the story of the Fantastic Contraption community's pursuit of the game's many Holy Grails, pushing the least pieces required for the official levels as low as they can go. Our story begins with level 39, On the Edge. This 4-piece design by Sluggo and others was created on April Fool's Day in 2009, just a few months after the game's initial release. For countless years, it was assumed that this was the fewest possible pieces required to solve On the Edge. Then Maxim asked the question, what if what we've thought all along was wrong? In a new forum thread titled Official Level Minimalism, What May Be Possible. Inspired by that thread, I presented this idea for a 3-piece design. It didn't quite solve, but if this same backwards roll on the gold piece could be induced by a shorter stick, or if the stick could just roll backwards on the orange ball a little more, it would create enough of a gap for victory. Unfortunately, despite a fair amount of effort, I was unable to get the solve. But almost a year later, JDC CDJ came out of the woodwork to bring forth the solution. It turned out I had been all wrong. The stick needed to be longer, not shorter. Then the gold piece stayed under the stick the entire time, preventing the stick from ever getting in the way of it dropping into the goal. This solve by JDC and I in 2016 was the first time that an official level had its least piece record reduced since 2009, and it turned out this was just the first domino of many to fall. Up next was Totem Pole. Most players' initial instincts would lead them to create a cart like this one, but this uses 12 pieces, surely we can go lower. Okay, let's simplify the cart just to get an idea of what we're working with. Unfortunately, even if this were able to roll to the right, it would still be too low. Well, what if we put the stick on top of the wheels? Now that might be high enough, and this is exactly what SP3000 and Layman did to achieve this 4-piece design all the way back in September of 2009. On that same official level minimalism thread by Maxim, one of the designs that he showcased was this 3-piece attempt by Ken75, which was created in May of 2017. It didn't achieve victory, but it showed potential. By tilting the rectangle with a water rod, then balancing it on this wheel and stick combo, the whole thing momentarily moves in unison to the right before falling apart. Could this really work to get the rectangle all the way to the goal? I mean, it barely moves to the right at all, and playing around with the design a bit only seems to make it worse. Well, sure, clicking around like a filthy casual isn't going to work. We're going to have to dig into the data. By directly editing the XML values for the positions of the pieces, we can make micro adjustments to the pieces that aren't even visible. And after who knows how much trial and error, Ken eventually got this. Almost 8 years later, and the fewest pieces needed to solve Totem Pole had dropped from 4 to 3. Holy Grail secured. Maxim also pointed out that this 5-piece design for Bricklayer by Helloweir seemed vulnerable. But what sort of idea could knock it down? Maybe a simple cart like this? No matter what I do, it just keeps getting stuck. What if I remove this wheel and add a long rod to add some continuous vibration? It takes a long time, but at least it won't stay in one place forever. I know you're probably thinking this could never work, but Yep, out of a single evening of brainstorming between Maxim, Kin, and ID36, ID was able to produce this, bringing the simplest bricklayer solve from 5 to 3. But they didn't stop there. That same night, they continued throwing around even more ideas. What if they just went for a lucky bounce, like this? And turns out it's possible, and Maxim was able to get the 2-piece solve. Up next is another ancient record, and it's for Close the Door. This 3-piece design was crafted by Jaiman all the way back in March of 2009. Do you remember what you were doing in March of 2009? I'm pretty sure I was on a school field trip to Washington, D.C. So how on earth could this be reduced? Well, Maxim actually had a very promising 2-piece design. Unfortunately, the opening of the door causes the rectangle to be marginally bumped to the left, barely outside of the goal area, preventing this design from solving. But in May of 2017, ID36 and Maxim worked together to produce the winning solve. Up next is this 2-piece design by Magnum 1000 for Back and Forth from March 2nd of 2009, again just months after the game was released. The left stick moves the right stick into position to land on the lower right object so that when the ball arrives it is gently guided left and into the goal. Taking these sticks away, and we can see that a 0-piece solution is impossible. So if someone were to create a 1-piece solution for Back and Forth, they could rest easy knowing they would hold the record forever. And that's exactly what Ree did with this. By sliding the stick off the small bump, it falls with the ball towards the lower right object. Then the inertia of the ball presses down on the left side of that object, causing it to rapidly rotate counterclockwise, which throws the ball into the goal. Another record down. The next of our records to fall is this 5-piece design for Sisyphia by Lynxcap and Flagitious, created in July of 2009. As you can tell, most of the simplest records had been nailed down within the first year of the game's release. But in July of 2024, this record was still standing until Maxim produced this solve, eliminating the need for the railcar linkage between the 2 powered wheels, bringing the record down to 4 pieces. This was the longest time between 2 simplest records for a single level, with 15 years between them. That was until Clover Drop came along in June of 2025 and shook things up even further, starting with this design for more balls, originally by Jaiman on April 16, 2009. By holding up the top 3 balls with a couple of blue rods, Jaiman allows a counterclockwise wheel to drop through, which utilizes some erratic behavior to drive over the balls, giving them enough topspin to make it up the small ramp on the right and into the goal. With the help of Keza Atkin and Maxim, it was discovered that a similar effect could be produced by using just 1 blue rod to hold up the top 3 balls. It took a lucky tweak and a lot of patience, but eventually, this design was produced, bringing the total pieces required to beat more balls from 4 to 3. And Clover didn't stop there. Clover took a look at this 3-piece design from Sticky Wolf for Gatekeeper and decided it could be improved. By using this rod to pop the rectangle up to the left, and this rod to push the now vertical rectangle back to the right, Sticky Wolf managed a 3-piece solution. Somehow Clover saw this and was inspired to come up with a new but similar method. By dropping this clockwise wheel onto the rectangle, it pops to the left, just like Sticky Wolf's design. But with some extremely clever timing, Clover Drop utilizes the spinning wooden rotor to catch the rectangle, causing the clockwise wheel to drive the entire assembly back to the right. This original design doesn't quite solve, but it shows the potential for it, and this second iteration gets even closer. Eventually, Clover finds the perfect tweak and seamlessly drops the rectangle through the tunnel, bringing the total pieces required to beat Gatekeeper from 3 down to 2. Every design I've discussed so far has been incredibly impressive, but if we want to talk about the truest of Fantastic Contraption Holy Grails, we should really limit our scope to the free levels. Until 2020, when Flash died, Fantastic Contraption could be played for free without an account, but you were limited to the first 21 official levels. This meant that quite literally millions of players have played these levels, far more than the paid official levels. One of the free levels, Back and Forth, seemed to have found its simplest record in 2009 with this 4-piece design. The counterclockwise wheels cause the big goal piece to spin clockwise, then push this one-piece bridge over the gap for the ball to ride into the goal. But basically from the inception of this design, players wondered, what if the stick wasn't needed at all? What if the purple wheels could fall off the ball and play the role of a bridge? Well, in 2017, Maxim revealed these potential designs. Nothing too noteworthy yet, but clearly the idea was there. It would take a ridiculous amount of luck for the wheels to cooperate enough to achieve victory, but Maxim couldn't let the idea go. He knew it would be possible if he could just get the right roll of the dice. One year later, and Maxim had done it. His ultimate quest had been completed, and he had secured his long sought-after Holy Grail. So that's the full list. Of the 42 official levels that were part of Fantastic Contraption's original release, these 9 are the only ones to have their least piece record set sometime beyond 2009. It's sort of crazy that these 9 records were all stagnant for 7 years, until Maxim probed us to think more deeply about the dusty trophy case, prompting me to present an idea for a 3-piece on the edge solution, which JDC ultimately brought to victory in 2016. Then 3 more records fell on the same day in 2017 when Ken, ID, and Maxim all collectively put their nose to the grindstone. 2018 brought about the Dice of God, which is possibly the most prestigious design on this list. Re kept the train rolling with the perfect one-piece momentum transfer in 2020. Then we saw a 4-year gap until Maxim set his mind on Sisyphia. And while I was in the process of writing this script, Cloverdrop, Keza Atkin, and Maxim broke the 2 final records on the same day in 2025. It's hard to imagine any of the remaining records for the original 42 levels to ever be beaten, but I think many of us would have said the same thing all the way back in 2009. So who knows what the future holds. So what's next? After all these designs that continued to push the limit for the official levels, are we finally done? Well, anyone who's familiar with Fantastic Contraption knows that isn't the case. There's an elephant in the room that I've been avoiding up until this point. This is a wash. And this is the 3-piece solution that has stood since sometime before July 28, 2008. Back in the early days of FC, this stood atop as potentially the most impressive least piece design for the free levels, and has been around since the first few days after the game was made public. But many of us have always wondered if it could be done in just 2. If the pulp could be balanced on a single rod instead of being held in place with 2 vertical supports, perhaps the same trajectory could be achieved. This design by Zhyrek in 2016 was the first to show some promise. Then JDC CDJ tried his hand at it in 2017. But the closest that any of us have ever gotten is this design by Maxim in 2021. Ultimately, the 2-piece design has never come to fruition, and this is one holy grail that continues to evade discovery. A wash isn't the only record that may one day be lowered. There are ideas floating around for a 4-piece design on Impossible, and a 2-piece design on U-Turn. And as the years press on, and FCers keep getting the itch to see how far this old game can be pushed, there will undoubtedly be new holy grails for us to seek and find. Time will only tell which of those will be captured, establishing their place in the FC archives, and which will forever evade our search. Thanks everyone for watching, and a huge thanks to Zhyrek, who helped me track down some of the dates that were published. After making my Brown Crown history video, I knew there were multiple other videos I'd love to make, and this one just happened to be what I settled on. Let me know if there are any other Fantastic Contraption related topics you're curious about, or want to see more of. Knowing how long each of these videos has taken me to make, it would be foolish of me to promise any more in the future, but these experiments have been pretty fun so far, and it's a good way for me to get my FC fix. Anyways, see you on the potential next video.